When I was a kid, we had this ritual that every Friday night we would go to my grandparents for dinner. Now, it was my favourite time of the week where we got to go and see my grandparents. Sometimes my cousins would come, and it was just a really nice family ritual. Then there were some other rituals in my life that I didn't overly love so much, like every night when Mum told me that I had to get in the shower and wash my hair. Now, I don't know about you guys, I'm sure your hair is easy to wash, but for some of us girls it takes a moment or two. And with this hair it definitely took a moment or two. And so that was a ritual that I didn't overly appreciate. And so this ritual business, it comes with mixed feelings. Sometimes it's good feelings, sometimes it's not so good feelings. And a ritual simply means something that happens consistently. It's like a routine, a habit almost. So when I think about rituals regarding prayer, now a few of you might recognize what is happening in this picture. These are Muslims, and they have one of the biggest rituals in their religion is prayer. In fact, it's one of the 5 pillars of their faith. And not only do they just say a quick prayer, but they pray 5 times a day, at dawn before sunrise, midday after the sun passes its highest. They pray in the later part of the afternoon, just after sunset, and again between sunset and midnight. So there are 5 times where they set aside a good portion of time to pray. When they pray, they face Mecca, and they spend some time in prayer. Now, is this a good or bad ritual? I think it's a pretty good ritual, right? Another ritual is in Judaism, where they have a prayer shawl. Now, the prayer shawl is called a talit, and the purpose is to inspire awe and reverence when they're praying. So they wrap oneself in the prayer shawl, and this just aids in bringing about the right mood, so it settles their mind. It reminds them of who they're praying to. It gives them this prayerful spirit, and they're able to concentrate on worship. So as different clothing has changed, I'm sure we're not all wearing the same clothing as ancient Jews did back in the early days. So they have kept this consistent. They've created this prayer shawl to keep it consistent. Now, what about Christianity? We've talked about Islam, we've talked about Judaism. What are some prayer rituals that we have in Christianity? Does this look familiar to anyone? Yeah! Do you say grace before meals? Yeah! So do I. You know, that's a ritual that we have in Christianity. We all pray before our meals. We say grace. From a little child, we're taught to say grace before we eat. What about this one? Do we pray before bed? I remember growing up every night before I went to bed, when Mum and Dad would come and say goodnight to me. Mum would say goodnight, then she'd go off, and then Dad would pray with me before bed. And that was a ritual that we had. And it was beautiful and special, and it taught me from a young age that prayer is important. And that's what it is, right? Prayer is this ritual, it's important. But prayer is so much more than just a ritual. Because oftentimes with rituals we become complacent, right? We start doing them without even thinking or realizing or remembering why we're doing them. We just do it because that's what's always been done. And we do it because that's just our habit. But prayer is so much more than that. And today, I want to talk about prayer being a relationship. I love this quote from Steps to Christ. And for me, this just summarizes completely what prayer is. In Steps to Christ, page 93, it says, prayer is the opening of the heart to God as to a friend. Prayer is the opening of our hearts to God as a friend. I love this concept because God didn't just create us with a one-way communication. He actually created prayer for us. He didn't just say, hey, I'll just tell you what to do when I need you to do something. No, he created prayer for us to be able to communicate with him as well. And it's not just, asking God to do something for us, but it's sharing with him, communicating with him as a friend. Some of the greatest memories that I have from my life are just the simple times where I'm gathered with my friends talking around a campfire, talking around the dinner table, just talking and sharing. And that's what God designed prayer to be. He created this prayer, this ritual, but so much more than a ritual. We see in Scripture, and we're going to have a look today, that prayer isn't just a ritual, but it's a method of building our relationship with Him. And what is that relationship? It's that relationship with a friend. That's what He created prayer for. He wants us to be His friends. And that's what we're going to have a look at today. So there's so many different aspects of prayer that we could look at. There are so many different prayers in the Bible. But as we heard in our children's story, as Christopher so eloquently said in his welcome, today we are looking at 1 Thessalonians chapter 5 and verse 17. And it's not a long verse. I'm pretty sure you could memorize it in a few minutes. It simply says, pray without ceasing. Pray without ceasing. What does that mean? As a kid, this concept baffled me. I remember I read this verse one day as a kid, and I was like, pray without ceasing. Well, ceasing means to never stop doing something, right? And so I thought to myself, well, today, I'm going to try and pray without ceasing. And so I was a very literal child at that time. And I was like, okay, so I need to constantly be talking to God at every moment of the day. And so I woke up and I made sure that I prayed as soon as I became conscious. And then I was praying and talking to God in my mind as I went along. But as you can imagine, it didn't last very long. I got distracted with something and then someone started talking to me and I was like, how do I talk to them and talk to God at the same time? It's just not working for me. And so I very quickly gave up that notion that praying without ceasing is literally talking to God at all times. Because that's not what it means. So what does praying without ceasing mean? What does it mean? Well, to answer that, we have to have a look at the context of which it's set in. So, praying without ceasing is set in 1 Thessalonians. Now, who wrote 1 Thessalonians? Does anyone know? Paul. Okay, good. Yes. Paul wrote 1 Thessalonians, and he was writing to the church in Thessalonica. And the church in Thessalonica was made up of a lot of Gentiles, so new believers. And they were having quite a few issues at the time. And a lot of the book is actually focused on the second coming of Jesus. And so, within the context of 1 Thessalonians, Paul is writing and he's encouraging them and he's sharing with them to increase their faith and encourage them as new believers. And then he starts addressing what would have been some of their questions. And within even chapter 5, so right before this verse is given, Paul is writing to them and he's talking about how to be ready for the second coming. So his focus in chapter 5 of 1 Thessalonians is how to be ready for the second coming. And as he finishes that, he then moves on to encouraging the church. He encourages the leaders and then he encourages the church. And he writes this verse. And if we go to 1 Thessalonians chapter 5, pick that up in a second. Sorry about that. 1 Thessalonians chapter 5. And we see the immediate context surrounding this verse. And it says, in verse 16, it says, rejoice always. 17, pray without ceasing. And 18, in everything give thanks, for this is the will of God in Christ Jesus for you. And just as a side note, I love that Paul here is talking in this context about how to be ready for the second coming. Well, all he's saying is build your relationship with Jesus. That's what he's saying here. He's saying, hey, rejoice always, pray without ceasing, in everything give thanks. And that's what it means, when we're building our relationship with Jesus. And that's what we're going to talk about today in praying without ceasing. It's all about building up this relationship. So this verse isn't given on its own. It's not given as the only verse in the Bible that talks about praying without ceasing. In Luke chapter 18 and verse 1, it says they ought to pray at all times. 1 Samuel chapter 7 and verse 8 says, do not cease to cry to the Lord for us. And Psalms 86 verse 3 says, to you I cry all day long. So this concept of praying without ceasing isn't only given here in 1 Thessalonians chapter 5, but we see it all throughout Scripture. But more than just throughout Scripture, the most this concept is talked about is within the writings of Paul. And not only he's talking about it, but he's saying, I pray without ceasing. So he's describing his own prayer life here. And there's even more verses than this, but I'm just giving you a sample today. Romans, he says, I pray unceasingly for you. Colossians, he says, we have not ceased to pray for you. 1 Thessalonians, again, it says, as we pray most earnestly, night and day. Again, in 2 Thessalonians, it says, we always pray for you. And in 2 Timothy, I remember you constantly in my prayers, night and day. So this concept of Paul, he's saying here, pray without ceasing, pray without ceasing. I pray without ceasing. He's describing his own prayer life. And then finally he says, he gives us advice. When he's telling us, the churches, how to pray, he says, be constant in prayer in Romans. And then in 1 Thessalonians, our verse for today, pray without ceasing. So it's a big concept, right? And I feel like we haven't even touched on what it is yet. So let's have a look at that. Let's have a look at what does it mean to pray without ceasing. Because it's a big concept. And so Paul obviously talks about that's what he does, and he wants us to do that too. Pray without ceasing. Perfect, okay. I had a look in my Andrew Study Bible here. Just a little plug for Andrew Study Bible. It's great. It gives you a lot of informative tips in there. And I was looking at the comments under this verse, and I love this quote that it gives as an explanation to what does it mean to pray without ceasing. And it says, live every moment in the consciousness of God's presence. Let me repeat that again. Live every moment in the consciousness of God's presence. Now, for those of you in a relationship, possibly married, or I can't speak for that because I am not married, but I have a lot of good friends, and sometimes I feel like, well, that's as good as it gets for now. So, as you're in that relationship, do you ever forget that you're married? Are there moments when you forget that you're married? It's kind of something that's a little bit important, and you're kind of always married, so you know that you're married. It's not a moment when you're not married and then, oh, you're married again. Like, you're just constantly married, right? You're constantly friends with that person. You're constantly in that relationship. There's not a moment where you don't live in the consciousness of that relationship. And that's what it's saying here. To pray without ceasing means to live every moment in the consciousness that you are in a relationship with Jesus. That He is there always. That He is your friend always. That's what it means to live, to pray without ceasing. So that brings us to our big idea for today. Prayer is not some meaningless ritual. It's a method to build our relationship with Jesus. And that's what He created it for. So, I want to, if you have your Bibles, turn with me to Nehemiah. Nehemiah is back in the Old Testament. I'm sure a lot of you know where it is because we have been studying it a lot in our Sabbath school recently. So Nehemiah, it's Ezra, Nehemiah, Esther, Job. So if you've gone to Psalms, you've gone too far. Go back a little bit further. Nehemiah chapter 2. And so the context of this is Nehemiah is what? What job does he have? Does anyone remember? Cupbearer. Perfect. So he is a cupbearer to the king. So he'd, try all the king's drinks, make sure they're not poisoned, and then give them to the king. If he died, well, then the king probably wasn't going to drink it. So he was constantly in the king's presence, okay? And what was going on was that the exiles that had been in Babylon, in captivity, had gone back home to Jerusalem. And when they got to Jerusalem, the wall was broken, the temple was broken, everything was destroyed. It was not a happy moment. And so Nehemiah hears reports about this, and he's devastated. He's like, oh, my people, we've just been released from Babylon, and life is a mess back home. And so he shows up to work one day for his boss, the king, and he looked sad. And so the king notices, and he's like, hey, Nehemiah, what's wrong? And Nehemiah is sad and he's feeling depressed, and so the king in Nehemiah chapter 2 and verse 4 and 5 says, the king said to me, what is it that you want? And Nehemiah, then I prayed to the God of heaven and I answered the king. We don't know what Nehemiah's prayer was in this moment. I don't think he would have gotten down on his knees and said some lengthy prayer out loud. It was probably a prayer of a cry of desperation in his heart. God, help me. Give me the words to say. He knew that if he said one wrong word, that, it was a 50-50 chance if he was going to live or die in this moment. And so in the most scary situation of his life, he was able in that moment to reach out to God in the silence of his mind and his heart and pray. I love this quote by A.W. Tozer, and it says, some prayers are like a fire escape, used only in times of critical emergency, never enjoyable, but used as a way of terrified escape of danger. And I think that sometimes we can fall into that category. I think sometimes we forget to pray and we forget to have that constant communication with God. But as soon as something bad happens, well then, God help me please. And God does help us. He does answer those prayers of terrified, when we're in danger. And He is faithful to answer those prayers, but He wants so much more than that. Look, I don't call up the Great Brigade on a daily basis and have a good old yarn to them. I don't dial 000 and be like, hey, can I speak to your paramedics? I just want to say hi. We don't have that sort of relationship. I call them when it's a time of emergency, right? And they show up. But God isn't like that. He doesn't want us to just call Him in times of emergency. He wants us to call on Him every day, every moment of the day. And Nehemiah didn't just call on God in times of emergency. If you go throughout Nehemiah and you read it, you see that he is praying in chapter 1, chapter 2, chapter 4, chapter 5, chapter 6, chapter 9, and chapter 13. The book of Nehemiah is full of his prayers. We know that he didn't only have a relationship with God that required him calling out in times of emergency, but Nehemiah was constantly in prayer. He was constantly using prayer to build his relationship with Jesus. So praying without ceasing means turning to God first in every situation. Nehemiah didn't wait a moment and say the thing and have that conversation with the king and then be like, oh God, actually I need your help here. I probably should have talked to you first. The first thing that he did was when the king asked him, hey, what's up? He prayed. And it reminds me, the time when I failed at this. I bought a new phone a couple of months ago, and it was something, it's such a trivial thing, right? You buy a new phone kind of without thinking about it. But later, as I was, doing my devotions, I was actually convicted. I was like, I didn't even ask God about that. It never even occurred to me to pray about that before I spent money on buying something, and it doesn't necessarily mean that you always have to do that, but for me, turning to God first means that, in every situation throughout my day, I turn to Him. So, as you know, I'm going to Gateway next year, and I got the news yesterday afternoon, it was super late yesterday afternoon, and I called my mom. So I called my mom first, and she didn't answer. And so I was like, oh, okay, she's busy doing something, maybe she's at work, I don't know. And then, so after I could get on to Mum, I called Dad to just talk to him about it. He picks up the phone because he's usually always got his phone on him for work. And so I started talking to him and telling him everything, and that was cool. But during our conversation, Mum walks through the door, right? This is back home. Mum walks through the door, and here's my dad on the phone to me, talking about how we're in a Gateway. And she was like, what? Why didn't you call me? She was jealous that I hadn't called her first. And I was like, Mom, I did call you. You just didn't answer the phone. And so even though God, will always answer the phone. I think the sentiment is there, right? God wants us to turn to Him first. He doesn't want us to make these decisions on our own. He doesn't want us to go to all of our friends and family and all of that. God wants us to come to Him. If we are in a relationship with Him, I'm not married here, but do you usually talk to your partner before making a big decision in your life? Something that you do, right? Same with God. If we're in a relationship with God, He wants us to turn to Him first. So praying without ceasing means turning to God first in every situation. No matter how big, like a major life decision, or small, like buying a phone, He just wants us to turn to Him first. The next point that we're going to look at today, praying without ceasing, means involving God in the good and the bad times. Involving God in the good and the bad. In the depression and in the joy, in the laughter and in the crying, in the big decisions and in the little decisions, when you're happy, when you're sad, He wants to be involved in it all. That's what it means to be in relationship with someone. Doing life with them. So I have a friend that I've been friends with for, going on like 10 years now. It's been a long time. We've been friends forever. But I feel like we only quite have like a surface relationship because we only like catch up and stuff, usually about like the good stuff. And we kind of, we have that like it's a good relationship. I love this person. But we only really talk in the good times. But there are friends that I've only been friends with for like 3 months, that we've experienced some bad times together. And I find that I have a deeper relationship with them than I do with this other friend that I've been with for, been friends with for 10 years. Because life isn't just good times. Life isn't just happiness and jokes and all of the fun stuff. Life is the good and the bad. A person who I think exemplifies this in Scripture is David. Now, David wrote a whole book of prayers, and you might know them as the Psalms. And in the Psalms, you see him talking through everything. It's not just good, it's not just bad. He's praising God through it all. And I want to have a look at 3 verses in Psalms that exemplify David turning to God in the good times and the bad. So, let's read this one. Psalm chapter 3, verses 1 and 2, and it says, Lord, how many are my foes? How many rise up against me? Many are saying of me, God will not deliver him. When do you think David wrote this psalm? Does anyone know off the top of their head? It's a bit of a tricky one. David wrote this one when he was fleeing from his son Absalom. Was that a good time in his life? Definitely not. There was family drama all over the place. You think you have family drama? Well, David had it more. It was a terrible time. There was war. He had to leave his house and go because he was scared that his son was going to come and kill him. That's not a good time, and yet David involves God in it all. Let's have a look at the next one. Psalm 34, verses 1 to 4. It says, I will extol the Lord at all times. His praise will always be on my lips. I will glory in the Lord. Let the afflicted hear and rejoice. Glorify the Lord with me. Let us exalt his name together. I sought the Lord and he answered me. He delivered me from all my fears. Now, does anyone know when Psalm 34 was written? What event in David's life happened for him to write Psalm 34? Well, this one was written after he pretended to be mad, crazy, before Abimelech, who then eventually let him go. So you can find that whole story in 1 Samuel chapter 21 if you want to read more about it. But pretty much he went into another country. The king of that country was going to capture him when he heard that Saul was chasing him. And so what he did to get out of it was just pretend to be mad. I don't know about you, but I haven't gotten out of any situations by pretending to be a crazy person yet. But that's what David did. And yet he involves God in that situation too. So in the most crazy situations in our life, God wants to be involved in it. God wants us to pray about it. That's part of building up this relationship with him. The final one that I want to look at today is Psalms chapter 51. Now this one might be a little bit more well known, but let's read it. Have mercy on me, O God, according to your unfailing love. According to your great compassion, blot out my transgressions. Wash away all my iniquity and cleanse me from sin. For I know my transgressions, and my sin is always before me. I think a lot of times we think that we can only go to God when we haven't really sinned. You know, when we're good enough, we can go to God. When we're good, we can go to Him. Or maybe, you know, we are sinners, so we recognize that, but only if our sin is just a little bit, right? Maybe if we told a white lie, we can still go to God and ask for forgiveness for that. But yet God wants us to come to Him in the deepest, darkest sin that we have. David here in Psalm 51 was written, he wrote this just after the prophet Nathan came to him and confronted him about his affair with Bathsheba, and then how he went and killed Uriah, Bathsheba's husband, in battle. And so David didn't leave out anything from God. He didn't hide away any of his life. He involved God in the good and in the bad. That's what praying without ceasing means. It means to involve God in every situation of our life, not just the good times. The final element of praying without ceasing that I want to look at today is praying without ceasing means praying, but then listening for God's answer. Praying without ceasing isn't only when we're talking to God, but it's when we stop and listen as well. And I think that this is a good example of this is again found in the story of David. I love the story of David. He's one of my favorite characters in the Bible. Also with Jonathan, just as a side note. If you haven't read it yet, recently, go back and have a read of it. It really just shows humanity at its finest. Or not so finest, but it helps me relate to David and to God better. Anyway, so David here is running away from Saul. He is on the run because Saul is trying to kill him. He found out that David is going to be the next king, and well, a threat to his throne is a threat to him, and so he's trying to kill David before he, you know, in Saul's mind, thinks that David's going to kill him first. And so 1 Samuel chapter 23 gives us this story of David, and he's running away from Saul. And I just want to read it to you, and then we'll talk about it. So it says, David said, Lord, God of Israel, your servant has heard definitely that Saul plans to come to Keilah and to destroy the town on account of me. Will the citizens of Keilah surrender me to him? Will Saul come down as your servant has heard? Lord God of Israel, tell your servant. And the Lord said, he will. David stayed in the wilderness strongholds. This is down to verse 14, we'll see 2 verses. David stayed in the wilderness strongholds and in the hills of the desert of Ziph. Day after day, Saul searched for him, but God did not give David into his hands. Okay, so we see here that David has this relationship with God. He has this relationship with God that he relies on God to protect him, because he can't do it himself, right? He needs God to tell him how to get through this, to protect him. And so not only does David pray to God, but he stops and listens to what God has to say to him too. I love it. Day after day, Saul searched for him, but God did not give David into his hands. And then if we go down to verses 25 and 26, I love what this says as well. It says, Saul and his men began the search, and when David was told about it, he went down to the rock and stayed in the desert of Maon. When Saul heard this, he went to the desert of Maon in pursuit of David. Saul was going along one side of the mountain, and David and his men were on the other side, hurrying to get away from Saul. And so, if you picture this, I think of these two armies, you know, David with a smallish band of people, and Saul with, a huge, army of soldiers. And as David and his men are, running along one side of the mountain, Saul and his men are running along the other side. But it just shows that, from the previous verse, we see that David was constantly listening to God. Where do I go next? where do I go? Do I go to the desert? Do I go to the mountains? Do I do this? Do I do that? And there was this constant relationship that David and God were in. And this story just shows us that, David never went anywhere without God first telling him where to go. And as they wound their way through the jungle, through the rocks and the deserts and the hills and the mountains, God continued to deliver David from Saul. And it got me thinking, how many times do I just make the next move without stopping to ask God about it? Or stopping to listen to where God is leading me? Oftentimes I'm like, there's an enemy behind me, like I can see this, I know that this is coming, these are the things in my life that I've got going on that I need to avoid, so I'm going to do this and do that, and not knowing that I'm actually running into the danger that God wants to prevent me from. And so the lesson that I learned from this story was that David listened. He took the time to hear God's voice and then would move. He didn't move and then ask God. He stayed, asked God, listened to what he had to say, and then would continue in his pursuit or to escape from Saul. I love this verse in Psalms 46. It says, "Be still and know that I am God." Put your hand up if you had a busy week this week. Oh, okay. I'm seeing a lot of hands. We're busy, right? Life is busy. It's hectic. I find that so oftentimes when I ask my friends, "Hey, how are you? Like, how's your week been?" They're always like, "Yeah, busy." I think I did that this morning. Kylie came and asked me, "How are you? Like, how was your week?" I was like, "Yeah, it was busy." We're always busy. Always. Always busy. Even when we stop and are on holidays, we usually don't know what to do with ourselves when we've stopped for a moment, and so we make sure that we're busy doing something. We're always busy. How do we be still in the busyness? Do we take time to be still and know that I am God? Do we take time to be still and listen when we're busy? How do we do that? I know that in my house, I live with 3 of my friends, and we are always busy. You can use that word to very accurately describe our lives. We're always busy. One of my friends, she's the pastor at College Church, the kids pastor there. My other friend is studying counselling. She's graduating this weekend, so she's very busy. And my other friend is doing high school teaching, and she's from Canada, so she's about to go back home. We're always busy, and on top of that, we're working and we're studying and we're doing so many different things. We're always busy. And it's so funny when when we don't take time to get together. It's so funny because there's a direct correlation between taking time to sit and catch up with each other and the way that we treat each other in our house. Does that make sense? Are you getting what I'm saying? So when we take the time to actually sit down over a meal, we're nicer to each other because we understand what each other is going through. But when we haven't seen each other in weeks, nerves get a bit on edge, replies get a little bit harsher in their tone. Things don't run as smoothly in our house when we're busy and haven't taken that time to sit and listen to each other. But I found that when we have certain rituals of doing dinner together once a week, or I make it a priority to throughout this semester to every Friday morning go and have breakfast with one of my friends. We have avocado toast, and it's fantastic because we haven't seen each other all week. But in that hour, that ritual that we put aside, that we made a priority, and just have breakfast and talk and share and listen to each other, it means that our friendship is so much deeper. It means the relationship we continue to build. When we sit and we listen and we make time in our relationship to build that relationship, it's so much better. Life goes so much smoother. And that's what God is saying. He's like, be still and know that I am God. Because when we take that time out to listen to Him, not only does He want to warn us of the enemies approaching in our lives, not only does He want to help us, navigate the terrain of the rocks and the mountains and the deserts and the hills. like he did for David. But he wants us to build that relationship with him. He wants us to take that time to develop a deeper friendship with him. So as we've looked today, we've talked about praying without ceasing. What does it mean? 3 things that I think it means. It means turning to God first in every situation. It means involving God in the good and the bad times. And it means praying, but then listening for God's answer. The purpose of prayer, if you haven't picked it up, is to develop a deeper relationship with Jesus. So that whenever we're faced with any challenges in our life, our natural response is to turn to God in prayer. So I want to have a look at some of the things that we can do. What are some rituals? Because rituals aren't always bad, are they? I just told you about this ritual that I have with my friend that we have breakfast every Friday morning. That's a really, really good ritual to put in place to develop our friendship. So what are some rituals that build the framework, that help us to connect more in our relationship with God? One of them, I think that's important, is to start the day with God. In your marriages, in your friendships, when you wake up, what's the first thing that you do? Do you go to Facebook? Oh, I know I'm guilty of that. Or do you talk to your spouse or your friends? What is the first thing that you do in your day? Because I love it, when you start the day well, you usually finish the day well. If you start the day on the wrong foot, it takes a while to catch up there, right? You're kind of always on the back burner there, and you're kind of always just trying to race to get back to where you want to be. So start the day with God. What does that look like? Well, last week Jared talked about the importance of spending time in God's Word. And that is definitely one way that we can listen to God, isn't it? He's given us a whole book. He's written it all down for us. It's right there. So do we take the time to talk to him in prayer and read the Bible and listen to him? I think that that's a pretty good way, a pretty good ritual to build in your life. Another one that I came across this week and I thought was really good was to put reminders on your phone to pray. I don't know about you, but I am constantly attached to my phone. It's something that I have at all times because I'm always doing something on it. I'm always texting people, calling people, or Googling something. You just always have your phone on you. So if there's a reminder that pops up on my phone, have you prayed yet today? Have you talked to God? I'm always messaging my other friends. I think that it might be a good tool to use to remind me to pray to God, to develop that relationship with him, to talk to him as a friend, not just my other friends as well. So I thought that was a pretty good reminder, a pretty good ritual to develop that might help you as well. Another one. How many hours do we spend in the car a day? Too many. Am I right? Too many. I'm always driving here, there, or somewhere else. It's lucky that I like driving. I really do enjoy it. My dad taught me that from a young age. But what do you do in the car? When you're sitting in traffic, what do you do? Are you listening to music? It's not necessarily a bad thing. Are you listening to podcasts? Podcasts are something that's become a lot more popular these days, and they have a lot of good information on them. It's a good thing. But what about sometimes taking one drive a week and use as your prayer time? Because a lot of us, we're busy. We established that earlier. Sometimes we feel like we're too busy to set aside time in our day to pray. Well, when you're stuck in the car, you can't be using your phone. You're not on Facebook. Why not take that time to pray? Pray for your family. Pray for your friends. Pray for your work colleagues. Pray for the drivers around you. Pray for the one that's yelling at you because maybe you accidentally cut them off. I don't know, but take that time to pray. There's another one that I came across this week as well. Use your time waiting. How many of us wait during the week? Whether it's at the dentist, at the doctor's, waiting for our food, waiting for our friends to finish up something, waiting for our kids. There's a lot of time spent just waiting, and usually the first thing I do whenever I'm waiting for something, I pick up my phone and scroll through Facebook. something that I do, to pass the time. I'm sure a few others in here can relate to that as well. But what if we use that time instead to pray? While we're waiting on someone else, let's use that time to pray for them. Pray to God, develop that relationship. So, the last thing that I want to say today is that all of these things are great. Turning to God first in every situation, involving God in the good and the bad times, praying and then listening. But all of this essentially is just developing our relationship with Jesus. Who is your first priority in this life? Is it God? Is that reflected in how we spend our time? Do we actually take that time to pray to Him and develop that relationship? I want to tell you another story, just to close. My friend, last year we went on a cruise with all my housemates, right? And one night, my friend, and I do have permission to share this, she was asleep and we were all still awake because she was tired and that was fair. And so she was sleeping in this little cabin of 4 bunk beds that we had in there, and she started sleep talking. And we thought, man, this is great. Let's start talking back to her and see what she says. And so we started asking her questions, and it came out that she was having this dream about a trapeze. It was super weird. Anyway, so she was like on this trapeze and she was really scared of heights. And she was like up apparently at the top of this trapeze, like getting ready because you have to like jump to like catch the handle. And she just didn't want to jump. She was telling us all as she was like talking. It's amazing. And so she was like telling us this, and then she was like, I'm really scared, but Jesus will catch me. And we were like, okay, like jump then and Jesus will catch you. And she was like, okay. And then she jumped in her dream and Jesus caught her or whatever. And then we kept asking her these questions. We're like, so, who do you like, classic girl talk, what boy is going on in this situation? Is there anyone around that we don't know about? You're asleep, so it's not like you can hide anything from us. When you're asleep, it's just what is on your brain and it comes out without any filter. And so we were asking her, who do you like? And she was like, I don't like anyone, I just love Jesus. And it was the most beautiful thing that I have ever heard. I just love Jesus. Jesus will catch me. I don't need anyone else, I just need Jesus. And to me, that's what prayer is all about. Prayer is all about us saying, I just need Jesus. It's turning to Him first. It's bringing Him with us in the good and the bad times. It's listening to Him because ultimately, we don't need anyone else. To pray without ceasing means that we just need Jesus at every moment of our day. Thank you.